Tonight, we're going to explore something that sounds ordinary, but is actually one of the most amazing truths in all of science. The atoms in your body. You've probably heard that we are made of stardust before. Scientists mention it often when talking about the origins of life. But here's what most people don't realize. When you truly understand what that means, when you grasp that every part of you was once part of distant stars, it changes how you see yourself and the universe. This is not just a poetic idea. It's a fact so incredible that it connects your body to the cosmos in ways most of us cannot imagine. And by the end of this journey, you're going to understand exactly why humans are made this way, how the atoms in your cells traveled across time and space, and why nothing else explains our origins better. Before we go any further, if you enjoy this kind of deep exploration, a quick like or subscribe really helps the channel grow. It's a small thing for you, but it makes a huge difference for me. Now, let's dive in. The idea that the human body is made of stars begins with a quiet and exact question. What, in simple terms, is the human body made of? Not feelings or thoughts, not identity or memory, but matter. The kind of matter that can be weighed, measured, and broken down into parts. When scientists study the body at its most basic level, they do not begin with organs or cells. They begin with elements. More than 99% of the human body is made from just 4 elements. These are oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Oxygen is the most common. It makes up about 65% of the body by weight. Most of it is found in water because water fills cells, blood, and every space where life happens. Carbon comes next. It forms about 18% of the body. Carbon is the frame that holds life together. It can link with itself and with other elements in long chains, rings, and shapes. This is why it is at the center of every living thing. Hydrogen makes up about 10%. Like oxygen, it is found mostly in water, but it also appears in almost every organic molecule. Nitrogen makes up about 3%. It is a key part of proteins and DNA, the molecules that allow cells to grow, repair, and copy themselves. These 4 elements alone explain most of what the body is. They explain its weight, its structure, and its chemical behavior. But the body does not work with only 4 elements. Life depends on many others, even when they appear in much smaller amounts. Calcium builds bones and teeth and helps muscles move. Phosphorus supports energy use inside cells and helps form DNA. Potassium and sodium carry electrical signals that allow nerves to fire and hearts to beat. Sulfur helps shape proteins so they fold the right way. Magnesium supports hundreds of chemical reactions. Iron carries oxygen in blood. Zinc supports immune cells and wound repair. Iodine allows the thyroid gland to control growth and energy use. Copper, selenium, and cobalt play small but vital roles. Each of these elements has a specific place in the body. Each one behaves according to strict physical rules. None of them appear by chance. None of them are created inside the body itself. The human body does not make elements. It only borrows them, uses them, and returns them. This matters because elements are not all born in the same way. Some are very old. Some required special conditions to exist at all. Hydrogen, the lightest element, formed very early in the universe. Oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen came much later. Iron formed under extreme pressure and heat. Gold and iodine required violent events to exist. The list of elements in the human body is not random. It reflects a long history that began before Earth existed. The body is often described as complex, but at its base, it is simple. It is a collection of atoms arranged into patterns. Atoms are not alive. They do not care where they are. An atom of carbon in a human cell behaves the same way as an atom of carbon in a rock or in deep space. What changes is the structure they form together. Life is not about new matter. It is about arrangement. If the body were taken apart atom by atom, nothing special would remain. The oxygen would not remember being part of lungs. The iron would not remember flowing through blood. The calcium would not remember holding weight. These atoms existed long before the body formed, and they will exist long after it is gone. The body is a temporary structure built from very old pieces. When scientists list the elements of the body, they are doing more than chemistry. They are reading a record. Each element carries a story about where it came from and what conditions were needed for it to exist. Hydrogen tells a story of the early universe when everything was hot and dense. Carbon tells a story of stars that lived long enough to build complex cores. Oxygen tells a story of massive stars that burned bright and fast. Iron tells a story of collapse and pressure. Trace elements tell stories of rare events that shaped galaxies. The human body requires a narrow set of conditions to exist. Too much or too little of certain elements leads to illness or death. Iron must be present, but not in excess. Sodium must stay within a small range. Iodine is needed in tiny amounts, yet without it, development fails. This balance shows how finely tuned biology is to the materials available on Earth. Earth itself had to form with the right mix of elements for bodies like ours to exist. Even water, which seems simple, reflects this history. Water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen is ancient. Oxygen is not. Oxygen required stars to exist first. Without stars, water could not form in the way life needs it. Without water, cells could not function. Blood could not flow. Chemistry would slow and stop. Carbon deserves special attention because it is the backbone of life. Carbon atoms can bond with up to 4 other atoms. This allows endless shapes and forms. Proteins, fats, sugars, and DNA all depend on carbon's flexibility. Silicon can also form chains, but not with the same ease or variety. This is why life on Earth is carbon-based. Carbon is common enough to be available and flexible enough to support complexity. Nitrogen is quieter but just as important. It helps form amino acids, which build proteins. Proteins do almost everything inside cells. They move molecules, copy DNA, send signals, and repair damage. Without nitrogen, life would be slow and fragile. Nitrogen in the body often comes from food, but the nitrogen itself was formed long before food existed. Iron plays a clear and visible role. It gives blood its red color. Each red blood cell contains hemoglobin, a protein that uses iron to bind oxygen. This allows oxygen to move from lungs to tissues. Without iron, cells starve even when oxygen is present. Iron is heavy compared to hydrogen and helium. It does not form easily. Its presence in the body points to a violent past where extreme heat and pressure once existed. Calcium is another example. It strengthens bones and teeth, allowing bodies to grow tall and strong. But calcium also acts inside cells, helping muscles contract and signals pass. Without calcium, hearts cannot beat properly. Calcium is not made in small stars. Its existence depends on large stellar processes that happened long before Earth cooled. Phosphorus is found in every cell. It forms part of DNA and RNA, the molecules that store genetic information. It also plays a role in ATP, the molecule cells use for energy. Every movement, every thought, every repair uses phosphorus. It is not abundant in the universe. Its presence on Earth is the result of earlier generations of stars. Even the smallest elements matter. Iodine is needed in tiny amounts, yet it controls hormones that guide growth and brain development. Selenium protects cells from damage. Zinc helps enzymes work. Copper helps nerves function. The body depends on these elements even though they make up less than a fraction of a percent of its mass. Together, these elements form a clear picture. The human body is not built from unique matter. It is built from common cosmic materials arranged in rare ways. Every breath, every step, every heartbeat depends on atoms that existed before the planet formed. The body does not stand apart from the universe. It is one of its patterns. This understanding changes how the body is seen. It is no longer just flesh and bone. It is a moving collection of ancient material. The atoms inside it have traveled through time and space, passed through different forms, and now exist together for a short while. The story of the body does not begin at birth. It begins with the elements themselves. To understand how human bodies are made of stars, the first step is to know what bodies are made of at all. Once the list of elements is clear, the next question follows naturally. Where did these elements come from, and why did they exist in the first place? To understand where the elements in the human body came from, the story has to move far back, long before Earth, before the Sun, before any stars at all. It begins when the universe itself was young, hot, and dense. At that time, there were no planets, no galaxies, and no life. There was only energy turning into matter as space expanded and cooled. In the first moments after the universe began, conditions were extreme. Temperatures were so high that atoms could not exist. Matter appeared only as simple particles moving at great speed. As the universe expanded, it cooled. Within minutes, the first stable atoms began to form. But this process was limited. Only the lightest elements could appear. Hydrogen formed first. It is the simplest element, made of just one proton and one electron. Because of this simplicity, hydrogen could form under the early conditions of the universe. Helium formed next. It required slightly more energy and pressure, but the young universe still had enough of both. A small amount of lithium also formed. These three elements were the only ones created in this early phase. This period is known as the time when the first elements were made. It lasted only a short while. As the universe continued to expand, it cooled too much for new elements to form. The window closed. When it did, the universe was left with a simple mix, mostly hydrogen, some helium, traces of lithium, nothing heavier. This matters because none of the elements that make up most of the human body existed yet. There was no carbon, no oxygen, no nitrogen, no calcium, no iron. Water could not exist. Rocks could not form. Chemistry was simple and limited. Life, as we understand it, was not possible in such a universe. For a long time after this, the universe remained dark. There were no stars to produce light. Matter slowly gathered under gravity. Clouds of hydrogen and helium grew denser in some regions. Over millions of years, these clouds began to collapse. As they did, pressure and heat increased at their centers. Eventually, the first stars were born. These early stars were different from the stars seen today. They were large and burned fast. Made almost entirely of hydrogen and helium, they lacked heavier elements. Their light came from simple reactions deep inside them, where hydrogen atoms joined to form helium. This process released energy and allowed stars to shine. But these first stars could only do so much. They could not form planets. They could not support complex chemistry. Still, they played a vital role. They were the first places in the universe where new elements could begin to form. Inside stars, pressure is intense. Gravity pushes inward while energy pushes outward. This balance allows stars to burn steadily for long periods of time. As hydrogen runs low in a star's core, conditions change. New reactions begin. Helium atoms can join together to form heavier elements. This is slow and requires great heat. Carbon is one of the first heavy elements to appear inside stars. This is important. Carbon is the backbone of life, yet it could not exist without stars. Oxygen follows later. Nitrogen appears through related paths. These elements are not made all at once. They form over long periods as stars age. The early universe needed stars to exist before the elements of life could appear. Without stars, the universe would remain simple and empty. Hydrogen alone cannot build bodies. Helium cannot form chains. Only with carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen does chemistry gain depth. The first stars lived short lives. Many were massive and burned through their fuel quickly. When they died, they released the elements they had formed back into space. This changed the universe. New clouds now contained more than just hydrogen and helium. They carried traces of carbon and oxygen. Over time, new stars formed from this enriched material. Each new generation had access to more elements than the one before. The universe slowly became more complex. This process took billions of years. There was no plan or direction. It followed the rules of physics alone. The elements in the human body reflect this long build-up. Hydrogen still dominates, just as it did at the start. But carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen required many generations of stars before they became common enough to shape planets and life. The presence of these elements in the body is a sign that the universe had aged. Lithium, one of the early elements, plays only a small role in biology. It exists in tiny amounts in the body. This reflects its limited production early on. Heavier elements had to wait. Their paths were longer and more violent. The early universe placed strict limits on what could exist. It set the starting materials. Everything that came later had to work with those materials. The human body is shaped by this early choice. It is rich in hydrogen because hydrogen was abundant. It uses carbon because carbon became available through stars. It depends on oxygen because oxygen formed later and spread slowly through space. This history is written into every cell. The balance of elements in the body mirrors the balance found on Earth, and Earth reflects the chemical state of the universe at the time it formed. Bodies are not just shaped by biology. They are shaped by cosmic history. If the universe had expanded faster, fewer stars might have formed. If it had cooled differently, element formation would change. In such cases, bodies like ours might not exist. The fact that humans are made of these elements is tied to the exact conditions of the early universe. The story of being made of stars does not begin with stars themselves. It begins with their absence, with a universe too simple to support life. Only through time, gravity, and heat did matter gain the tools needed to form bodies. The elements of the human body are not just old. They are delayed. They required waiting. They required stars to live and die. Before that could happen, the universe had to create the simplest building blocks and then step aside. Understanding this makes the body part of a much larger process. It is not separate from the universe's early history. It is one result of it. The atoms inside human cells trace their roots to a time when only hydrogen and helium filled space, and everything else had yet to begin. Once stars appeared, the universe gained something new. It gained places where matter could change in deep and lasting ways. A star is not just a bright object in the sky. It is a region where gravity presses matter together so tightly that atoms can join and become something else. This does not happen easily. It requires weight, heat, and time on a scale that only stars can provide. A star begins as a cloud of gas. Most of this gas is hydrogen, with some helium mixed in. Over time, gravity pulls the gas inward. As the cloud shrinks, its center grows hotter and denser. At first, nothing shines. The cloud is dark and cold. But as pressure builds, temperature rises. When the center becomes hot enough, hydrogen atoms begin to join. This joining is slow and steady. Two hydrogen atoms come close, pushed together by pressure. Under normal conditions, they would repel each other. Inside a star, the pressure is so strong that they can overcome this push. When they join, energy is released. This energy moves outward as light and heat. The star turns on. For most of a star's life, this is what it does. It turns hydrogen into helium. This process can last for millions or billions of years, depending on the star's size. Small stars burn slowly and live long lives. Large stars burn fast and live shorter ones. But in all cases, this steady change shapes the star from the inside. As hydrogen in the core runs low, the balance changes. Gravity begins to squeeze the core harder. Temperature rises again. When it becomes high enough, helium atoms can begin to join. This step is harder. It requires more heat and pressure than hydrogen joining. Not all stars can do it. Only stars with enough mass reach this stage. When helium joins, carbon forms. This is a key moment in cosmic history. Carbon did not exist in the early universe. It can only form inside stars. Once carbon appears, the star enters a new phase. Its structure changes. New layers form inside it, each with its own role. In larger stars, the process continues. Carbon can join with other atoms to form oxygen. Oxygen can help form neon. Neon can lead to magnesium. Step by step, heavier elements appear. Each step requires higher heat. Each step lasts less time than the one before. The star builds these elements in layers, like rings inside a tree. This layered structure is important. Hydrogen burns in the outer core. Helium burns deeper inside. Carbon and oxygen burn closer to the center. Each layer depends on the one above it for pressure. The star becomes a stack of reactions held together by gravity. These changes take a long time. Even fast-burning stars live for millions of years. Slower stars live for billions. During this time, elements are not released into space. They remain locked inside the star. The star is a storage place, holding material that will matter later. Stars are the only places where this kind of element building can happen naturally. Planets are too small. Pressure is too low. Temperature is too low. Space itself is too thin. Only the deep cores of stars provide the needed conditions. Without stars, the universe would remain stuck with its early elements. Iron marks a limit. When a star begins to form iron in its core, it reaches a turning point. Joining iron atoms does not release energy. Instead, it uses energy. This breaks the balance that keeps the star stable. Gravity gains the upper hand. The core begins to collapse. Before collapse happens, iron builds up at the center. Iron is heavy. It represents the end of energy-producing fusion inside stars. Up to iron, each step releases energy. Past iron, it does not. This rule shapes how stars live and how they die. Small stars never reach this stage. They stop after forming helium or carbon. They slowly lose their outer layers and fade away. Larger stars go further. They build many layers and reach iron. Their deaths are sudden and violent. Even before death, stars change the universe. They shine light that shapes nearby space. They heat surrounding gas. They push matter outward with winds. These slow releases spread some elements into space, but the deepest materials remain trapped until the end. The elements that make up the human body reflect these long processes. Carbon took time to form. Oxygen required larger stars. Iron required extreme pressure. Each atom of iron in blood once sat deep inside a star. It remained there until that star could no longer hold itself up. Stars do not create life. They create possibility. They supply the materials that life later uses. Without stars, there would be no carbon chains, no water, no solid ground, no air to breathe. The body's elements point back to these distant furnaces. It is important to note how slow this process is. Nothing about star fusion is quick. Even the fastest reactions unfold over thousands or millions of years. This slowness allows order to emerge. It allows elements to form in stable ways. The universe does not rush to complexity. It builds it layer by layer, pressure by pressure. Each star follows the same basic rules, shaped by mass and time. Some live quiet lives. Some burn brightly and end fast. All of them add to the universe's supply of elements. When we say the body is made of stars, this is what it means. Not that stars touch the body, but that the body's atoms were shaped inside them. The calcium in bones, the oxygen in lungs, the carbon in cells all pass through stellar cores. They were formed under forces far beyond anything on Earth. These elements waited. They remained inside stars for ages. Only after stars ended their lives could these materials move on. Only then could they take part in new structures. Understanding stars as element factories connects the body to a deep and steady process. Life did not invent its own materials, it inherited them. The body is a later chapter in a story that stars began long before Earth formed. To follow this story further, it becomes necessary to see what happens when stars can no longer hold their layers together, and how their endings release the elements they spent their lives making. When a large star reaches the end of its fuel, the change is not gentle. For most of its life, the star balances two forces. Gravity pulls matter inward. Energy from fusion pushes outward. As long as fusion continues, the star holds its shape. But when iron fills the core, this balance breaks. Iron cannot release energy when its atoms join. Instead of giving power to the star, iron drains it. The core no longer has a source of outward force. Gravity takes over. In a short time, the core collapses inward. This collapse happens faster than anything the star has experienced before. As the core falls in, it becomes extremely dense. Atoms are crushed together. Electrons are forced into protons. The core stiffens and suddenly stops collapsing. This sudden stop sends a shock wave outward. The outer layers of the star crash into this shock and rebound. The result is an explosion. This explosion is called a supernova. For a brief moment, a single star can shine brighter than an entire galaxy. The blast tears the star apart. Its layers are thrown into space at great speed. Matter that was locked inside the star for millions of years is released in seconds. But the explosion does more than scatter material. It creates new elements. During the collapse and explosion, conditions become extreme. Temperatures rise higher than in the star's normal life. Pressure increases beyond steady fusion. In this chaos, atoms are hit with floods of energy and particles. New reactions become possible. Elements heavier than iron form during this moment. Gold, silver, iodine, uranium, and many others are created here. These elements cannot form during calm fusion. They require violence. They require a sudden rush of energy and matter. Gold, for example, forms when atoms quickly capture particles before they can fall apart. This process happens in a blink of time. The same is true for iodine, which the human body uses to control growth and energy use. Uranium, which provides heat inside Earth through slow decay, also forms in these events. These elements are rare because the events that create them are rare. Not all stars become supernovae. Only the largest ones reach this stage. Even then, the conditions must be just right. This is why heavy elements make up such a small part of the universe. When the explosion ends, the star is gone. In its place is a remnant. This may be a neutron star, packed so tightly that a spoon of its matter would weigh billions of tons. Or it may be a black hole, where gravity is so strong that not even light escapes. But around this remnant spreads a cloud of gas and dust rich with new elements. This cloud expands into space. It mixes with nearby gas. Over time, it cools. Atoms begin to bond. Dust grains form. These grains carry heavy elements that did not exist before the explosion. This scattered material becomes part of the galaxy's supply. It drifts for millions of years. It joins other clouds shaped by earlier stars. Each supernova adds to this mix, slowly changing the chemical makeup of the galaxy. The human body depends on this process in direct ways. Iron in blood comes from stellar cores, but iodine comes from explosions. Zinc and copper come from these events. Even trace amounts matter. Without iodine, the brain does not develop properly. Without zinc, immune systems fail. These needs tie biology to stellar death. Earth itself required these heavy elements. Planets need solid matter. Rocks need silicon, iron, and calcium. A planet without enough heavy elements cannot form a solid surface. It cannot hold an atmosphere well. It cannot support complex chemistry. Supernovae helped make Earth possible. They enriched the gas that formed the sun and planets. Without past explosions, the solar system would lack key materials. Water might still exist, but life would be simple or absent. The spread of elements from supernovae is uneven. Some regions of space receive more than others. This affects where planets form and what they are made of. Earth formed in a region already enriched by many earlier stars. This gave it a wide range of elements. The timing also matters. Too early, and there are not enough heavy elements. Too late, and star formation slows. Life appears only when conditions line up. The body reflects this timing. Its chemistry shows that it formed in a mature universe, not a young one. Supernovae also shape space through force. Their shock waves compress nearby clouds. This can trigger new star formation. In this way, death leads to birth. One star's end can help another begin. The atoms released in these explosions do not stay together. They travel far. They mix with material from many other stars. The carbon in one cell may come from a different star than the iron in the same cell. The body is a blend of many stellar lives. This mixing erases identity. Atoms lose any link to their original star. What remains is only chemistry. Yet that chemistry carries a record. Heavy elements show that collapse and explosion occurred somewhere in the past. When people say humans are made of stardust, this is not a vague idea. It points to specific events. It points to stars that collapsed, exploded, and scattered their cores. It points to matter that endured heat beyond imagination. Without supernovae, the universe would lack depth. It would have stars and light, but little else. No gold, no iodine, no uranium-warming planets from within, no complex bodies. The human body is not shaped only by calm processes. It depends on violent ones as well. Its atoms carry the mark of destruction as much as creation. Every heavy element in the body is proof that at least one star died in the past. This link is not symbolic. It is physical. The atoms inside living tissue once passed through forces strong enough to tear stars apart. They survived. They traveled. They became part of something new. To see how these scattered elements come together again, the story moves outward, away from single stars, toward the wider space between them, where dust and gas slowly gather and begin the next stage. After a star has ended its life, whether in a violent supernova or a slow fading, its matter does not vanish. The elements it contained are released back into the universe, returning to space to join clouds of gas and dust. These clouds drift between stars, slowly moving, colliding, and mixing. Over long periods, they become molecular clouds, dense regions where new stars can form. This process is quiet and gradual, stretching over millions of years. Unlike the sudden brightness of a supernova, galactic recycling is subtle, almost invisible, but it shapes the chemistry of the universe. The material ejected from dying stars carries the full range of elements the star produced. Lighter elements like hydrogen, helium, carbon, and oxygen spread widely. Heavier elements, formed in the deep layers or during explosions, are less common but no less important. Iron, zinc, iodine, gold, and uranium drift outward, carried on shock waves, or released slowly into space. These atoms mix with material from many other stars, creating a cosmic blend. The process ensures that new stars and planets form from enriched matter, not the pristine hydrogen and helium of the early universe. Molecular clouds are the sites where the scattered matter begins its slow reassembly. These clouds are cold, often just a few tens of degrees above absolute zero, and dense compared to the surrounding space. In them, gas atoms and dust grains gather, attracted by their mutual gravity. Collisions within the cloud can trigger new reactions. Some hydrogen molecules form, some carbon binds with oxygen to make carbon monoxide, and other simple molecules appear. Dust grains, tiny particles of silicon, carbon, or metals, act as surfaces where these molecules can attach. Chemistry proceeds very slowly, over thousands or millions of years, but the results are profound. Over time, regions of higher density form within these clouds. These dense pockets eventually collapse under gravity to create new stars. When a new star forms, it carries the legacy of all the stars that came before. The gas surrounding it contains not only hydrogen and helium, but carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and traces of heavier elements. This enriched material is the raw matter for planets and, much later, for life. Each new generation of stars builds upon the remnants of the previous one. In this way, galactic chemistry evolves steadily over billions of years. The pattern is repetitive but not simple. Not all clouds collapse at once. Some remain diffuse for millions of years, while others fragment into dozens of regions that birth stars in clusters. The material inside these clouds is mixed unevenly. Some pockets are rich in carbon, others in iron. Some retain dust from ancient stars, while others contain mostly gas. This unevenness leads to diversity in the composition of stars and planets. Some planets, like Earth, acquire the right mix of elements to support complex chemistry. Others do not. This is why some planets remain barren, while others become cradles of life. Dust plays a special role in this recycling. Tiny particles from stars carry elements in solid form. Carbon dust may be coated with ice. Silicate grains can hold magnesium and iron. These particles act as seeds around which gas can condense. When a molecular cloud begins to collapse, dust helps the process move forward. Without dust, gravity alone would struggle to form dense regions. Dust also carries a chemical memory. Molecules can form on dust surfaces, storing carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and other biologically important elements. This is a form of slow preparation, setting the stage for life billions of years later. As stars recycle matter, the galaxy gradually grows richer. Early generations of stars produce only hydrogen, helium, and traces of light elements. Later generations build carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. Massive stars end in supernovae, producing iron and heavier elements. Each wave of star formation adds to the total chemical diversity of the galaxy. Over billions of years, this process transforms a nearly uniform cosmos into one capable of supporting planets with the chemical complexity necessary for life. The timeline is immense. Clouds drift for tens of millions of years. Stars live for millions or billions of years before releasing their matter. Galaxies themselves evolve over billions of years, rotating, colliding, and stirring their material. Yet, the process is continuous. Every atom in the human body has likely passed through this cycle more than once. Hydrogen may have been part of multiple stars. Carbon may have formed in several generations, and iron may have originated in a distant supernova long before the Sun existed. Even as stars recycle material, the universe is not static. Clouds of gas move through the galaxy, driven by gravity, radiation, and the remnants of past supernovae. Collisions between clouds trigger bursts of star formation. Spiral arms in galaxies sweep through gas, compressing it and creating new regions of birth. Each new star adds light and energy, altering the surrounding matter. Over time, these dynamics ensure that chemical enrichment continues, spreading heavier elements further and further into the galactic disk. Planet formation relies on this enriched matter. As a dense pocket of a molecular cloud collapses, it forms a central star surrounded by a disk of gas and dust. This protoplanetary disk contains all the elements necessary for planets to form. Dust grains collide and stick together, forming larger particles. Over thousands of years, these particles grow into planetesimals, then protoplanets, and eventually full planets. The composition of these planets depends on the mix of material in the original cloud, a mixture of gas, dust, and elements recycled from countless stars. In this way, planetary systems inherit the history of their galaxy. Chemical complexity grows as the matter is processed through generations. Carbon can form long chains and rings. Oxygen bonds with hydrogen to make water. Nitrogen integrates into simple molecules. Phosphorus joins with oxygen to create phosphate, crucial for energy transfer in cells. Sulfur, magnesium, and trace metals become incorporated into minerals and organic compounds. Every new star and planetary system has access to more types of matter than the previous generation. Life's building blocks are the products of this long, slow enrichment. Recycling also connects distant parts of the galaxy. Material from a star in one corner of a spiral galaxy can drift thousands of light years to participate in star formation elsewhere. Over time, the chemical signatures of different regions mix. This movement ensures that biologically useful elements are not confined to one place. Eventually, planets like Earth inherit a wide variety of elements, assembled from stars scattered across the galaxy. The human body is the result of this galactic recycling. Every oxygen atom in the lungs, every carbon atom in DNA, every iron atom in blood, has a history that extends far beyond the Earth. Some atoms may have formed in small stars billions of years ago. Others may have been forged in the heart of a massive star that exploded long before the Sun existed. They traveled through interstellar space, became part of molecular clouds, joined a protoplanetary disk, and finally assembled into living tissue. The body is a temporary pattern that holds a record of the universe's chemical evolution. Even trace elements reflect the process. Iodine, required in tiny amounts, originates in supernovae. Magnesium, present in every cell, has a similar story. Zinc, copper, and selenium, all needed for enzymes and chemical reactions, were distributed unevenly by generations of stars and carried on dust grains. The body's chemistry cannot exist without this cumulative galactic enrichment. The pattern of recycling is repeated endlessly. Stars form, live and die. Their matter is scattered, cools, mixes with other clouds, and eventually becomes the raw material for new stars and planets. The galaxy is a workshop of creation and destruction, a slow forge where elements are repeatedly processed and redistributed. This ensures that, over time, the cosmos becomes richer in the elements that life requires. Galactic recycling also explains diversity in planetary systems. Not every cloud contains the same mix of elements. Some are richer in carbon, others in oxygen or iron. This variance leads to differences in planet composition and ultimately the possibilities for life. Earth happens to have inherited an ideal mixture, allowing water, stable rocks, and chemical complexity. This rare combination is the result of countless cycles of star formation and death. In this way, the body's atoms are ancient travelers. Hydrogen may have drifted for billions of years through multiple clouds. Carbon may have been formed in more than one star. Iron in blood may have originated in a violent supernova long before the sun existed. Dust grains carried these atoms across vast distances, slowly assembling into the building blocks of the solar system. Recycling at the galactic level is continuous and unobserved, yet profound. It connects stars, planets, and life. Every molecule of water, every chain of carbon, every metal used in a living cell was once part of a distant star. The universe, through these slow processes, prepares the matter needed for life long before life exists. This slow enrichment also sets limits. Without repeated generations of stars, there would be no carbon-rich planets. There would be no oxygen to breathe, no nitrogen to form DNA, no phosphorus for energy transfer. The chemistry of life depends on billions of years of processing, on the patient recycling of elements, and on the mixing of materials across space. The human body, then, is not an isolated structure. It is the endpoint of an immense, long-lasting process. Each atom is part of the galaxy's ongoing work, a product of cycles that began before the Sun and Earth formed. Stars die, matter drifts, clouds condense, new stars are born, and life emerges. Each stage builds upon the previous, ensuring that the cosmos slowly becomes richer, not only in matter, but in the potential for life. The atoms of the human body carry the signature of galactic history. They are evidence of countless stars, billions of years of time, and the persistent motion of matter through the galaxy. Each element, from hydrogen to iron to iodine, is a chapter in the story of cosmic recycling, a story that stretches from the birth of the universe to every living cell on Earth. The story of the human body continues through time and space to a moment when the galaxy's recycled material began to gather in one place. Clouds of gas and dust, enriched by countless generations of stars, slowly drifted together under gravity. Some regions of the cloud were denser, containing more dust grains and heavier elements. These clouds were cold and dark, floating silently in the galaxy. Over millions of years, gravity caused these dense regions to collapse, pulling the material inward toward a central point. As the cloud contracted, it spun slowly. Conservation of angular momentum caused the spinning to increase as the cloud became smaller. The center grew hot and dense, while the outer parts flattened into a rotating disk. In the middle, the pressure and temperature eventually became high enough to ignite nuclear fusion. The Sun was born, a new star formed from the remnants of previous generations. Around it, the disk of gas and dust held the potential for planets, asteroids, and comets. The disk was not uniform. It had variations in density, temperature, and composition. Closer to the newborn Sun, heat was intense. Lighter gases like hydrogen and helium tended to drift outward. Closer in, heavier elements like iron, silicon, magnesium, calcium, and aluminum could condense into solid grains. These grains collided and stuck together, forming clumps that would later become planetesimals. Over time, planetesimals collided to form protoplanets, growing larger as gravity pulled in more material. Earth formed in a zone where temperatures were moderate enough to allow water-bearing minerals and other volatile compounds to survive. The chemical composition of the disk determined the planet's potential for complex chemistry. Carbon was present in sufficient amounts to form long chains. Oxygen combined with hydrogen to create water. Nitrogen existed to allow the formation of amino acids and nucleotides. Phosphorus and sulfur, though less abundant, were available to support chemical energy transfer and protein structure. Iron and magnesium were present in large enough quantities to create a strong core and mantle. Calcium and other elements could build solid crust and rocks. The process of planet formation was violent in small ways, but gradual overall. Protoplanets collided, merging or breaking apart. Some material escaped entirely, forming the asteroid belt, or being ejected from the solar system. Comets preserved the most fragile compounds, carrying icy, molecules and organic materials from the outer reaches. The Earth that emerged was a mixture of dust grains, gas, and ices, all inherited from stars long dead. The elemental ratios on Earth were crucial. There was enough carbon for organic molecules, enough water for liquid oceans, and enough metals to allow a dense core that could support plate tectonics. Plate tectonics itself is essential for recycling minerals and regulating the planet's climate. Without it, the surface would be static and less capable of sustaining chemical cycles necessary for life. The precise abundance of oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and trace elements allowed the oceans, atmosphere, and crust to form in a balanced way. The Sun itself played a role in shaping the distribution of elements. Its heat caused lighter gases to escape from inner regions, while radiation pushed dust grains outward. This sorting process helped create planets with different compositions. Gas giants formed farther out, capturing hydrogen and helium. Rocky planets, including Earth, formed closer in, containing more heavy elements. The arrangement of planets reflected the composition of the original disk and the forces acting on it. Even after formation, Earth continued to acquire material. Impacts from leftover planetesimals delivered water, carbon, and other volatile compounds. Meteorites carried additional heavy elements, some of which are still found in trace amounts today. These impacts were part of the continuing recycling process, connecting the newly formed planet to the broader galactic system. Matter that had once existed in ancient stars found its way into the developing Earth. The formation of the Moon illustrates the intensity of these processes. A large collision between Earth and another protoplanet created debris that coalesced into a natural satellite. This event also contributed to mixing materials from different sources, further blending elements. The Moon stabilized Earth's tilt, influencing the planet's climate over billions of years. Even such details are linked to the distribution of matter from stellar debris. Water, a key ingredient for life, arrived both during formation and through later delivery by comets and asteroids. Hydrogen, originally from the early universe, and oxygen, formed in massive stars, combined to create water molecules. These molecules collected in the Earth's surface and interior, forming oceans, rivers, and ice caps. The presence of water enabled chemical reactions necessary for life and helped regulate the planet's temperature. Earth's atmosphere also reflects its origin. Volatile gases, released from the planet's interior and from impacting bodies, formed the initial air. Carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and trace gases emerged from a mix of chemical sources. The sun's light and solar wind interacted with these gases, creating conditions suitable for the first complex chemistry on the surface. Without the right balance of elements, the atmosphere might have been too thin, too dense, or chemically unsuitable for sustaining water or life. Iron, concentrated in Earth's core, contributes to the planet's magnetic field. This field protects the surface from charged particles emitted by the sun. Without a magnetic field, the atmosphere would erode, water would escape, and chemical conditions would be altered. The presence of iron in sufficient quantities depends on the earlier production of this element in massive stars and its delivery through supernovae and recycled dust. The combination of elements on Earth also allowed plate tectonics to develop. Silica, magnesium, calcium, and aluminum built a strong, flexible crust. Iron and magnesium formed a heavy mantle. Heat from radioactive decay, originating from uranium and thorium produced in supernovae, drove convection in the mantle. These motions moved plates, recycled minerals, and shaped continents over billions of years. The chemical and physical properties of Earth depend on the precise mix of elements inherited from stellar debris. Earth's oceans, atmosphere, and crust contain an intricate balance of trace elements. Zinc, copper, manganese, and molybdenum are present in tiny amounts, but are critical for chemistry and life. Phosphorus, present in rock and soil, participates in energy transfer in cells. All these elements arrived through recycling of stars, preservation in dust grains, and incorporation into the forming planet. Life could only develop where this mixture existed. The formation of other planets shows how sensitive this process is. Venus and Mars, though similar in size and composition to Earth, lack liquid water and tectonics in the same way. Slight differences in elemental ratios, distance from the Sun, and delivery of volatile materials resulted in planets unable to support complex chemistry. Earth's unique combination is a consequence of the particular history of stellar recycling, cloud collapse, and planetary assembly. Asteroids and comets serve as reminders of this history. They are made of primitive materials, containing elements from early stars that never became part of the planets. Studying them provides insight into the composition of the early solar system. They carry carbon, water, metals, and ices, showing how matter from many sources combined over time. The Sun, Earth, and all other bodies in the solar system represent a snapshot of galactic chemistry. Every element in the planets has a lineage tracing back through generations of stars. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, iron, magnesium, and calcium, all essential for life, were created, dispersed, and reassembled over billions of years. This story connects the human body, the Earth, and the Sun to the vast processes of the galaxy. In summary, Earth formed from a disk of gas and dust rich in elements produced by many previous stars. Gravity, collisions, heat, and time shaped the planet into a world capable of supporting liquid water, complex chemistry, and life. The human body depends on this planetary formation. Without the precise ratios of elements delivered through recycled stellar material, water, rocks, and chemical cycles would not exist as they do. Life, and ultimately humans, are direct beneficiaries of this process. The atoms in our bodies reflect this entire history. Hydrogen, that was part of the early universe, carbon and oxygen forged in stars, iron from supernovae, and trace elements from countless dust grains, all combined on Earth to form the chemistry of life. Our bodies are, in a very real sense, the product of the solar system's formation from ancient stellar debris. This connection is not symbolic. It is factual, grounded in chemistry, physics, and planetary science. Every step in the formation of the solar system contributed to the conditions necessary for the elements that make up life as we know it. Once Earth had cooled enough for a stable crust and oceans to exist, its chemical story entered a new stage. The planet's surface contained water, minerals, and a variety of elements inherited from stars. Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, iron, and trace metals were all present in different proportions. These elements were free to combine in ways that would not occur in space alone. Water, covering much of the planet, acted as a medium where chemical reactions could take place. It dissolved salts and minerals, carrying ions and molecules across the surface and into shallow pools. Carbon played a central role. Its ability to bond with itself and with other elements created chains and rings of molecules with diverse shapes. Simple compounds like carbon dioxide and methane were abundant. When carbon bonded with hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, molecules capable of more complex structures appeared. These compounds were not alive, but they had the potential to participate in organized chemical networks. Each bond formed a stable connection, allowing molecules to accumulate, persist, and interact with others over time. Water facilitated these interactions. It is a polar molecule, meaning it has areas of positive and negative charge. This property allows it to dissolve ionic compounds, carry charged particles, and stabilize molecules. Reactions in water occur more readily because molecules can move freely and collide. Water also stabilizes temperature changes, buffering heat fluctuations from sunlight, geothermal activity, and chemical reactions. In this way, water became the medium in which early chemistry could organize. Mineral surfaces contributed as well. Clays, iron-sulfur minerals, and other solid materials provided sites where molecules could attach, concentrate, and react. On flat surfaces, molecules could align in ways that increased the likelihood of forming bonds. Certain minerals catalyzed reactions, lowering the energy needed for bonds to form or break. This created small networks of molecules that could persist longer than in free water alone. Repeated cycles of wetting, drying, heating, and cooling across mineral surfaces allowed new combinations to arise, increasing chemical complexity. Simple organic molecules could form under these conditions. Amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, are one example. Laboratory experiments using conditions mimicking early Earth show that amino acids can arise from reactions between simple gases and energy sources such as lightning, ultraviolet light, or heat. Nucleotides, which form the basis of RNA and DNA, can also arise through pathways that involve water and minerals. These molecules are not life themselves, but they are essential for the chemistry that leads towards self-organization. The environment was dynamic. Volcanic activity released gases and minerals into oceans and shallow ponds. Hydrothermal vents delivered heat and chemical gradients that could drive reactions. Tides and waves created cycles of concentration and dilution, helping molecules encounter one another repeatedly. These physical processes, combined with the chemical inventory inherited from stars, enabled the gradual formation of increasingly complex molecules. Interactions between molecules began to show patterns. Some molecules could stabilize others through weak bonds or complementary shapes. Certain sequences of reactions were more likely to occur because the products of one step became the reactants for another. These sequences did not constitute life, but they represented a kind of chemical organization. Molecules were not random. They followed chemical rules and physical principles that allowed networks to maintain themselves for extended periods. The combination of water, minerals, and available elements created microenvironments with distinct chemical properties. Pools with higher concentrations of salts or metals, for instance, could favor the formation of some molecules over others. Regions near volcanic vents had high temperatures and reduced gases, while shallow pools exposed to sunlight experienced different energy fluxes. This heterogeneity allowed multiple types of chemistry to occur simultaneously, increasing the chance of forming complex molecules. Phosphorus, often bound in minerals, became available through weathering and leaching. In combination with oxygen and other elements, phosphorus could form phosphate groups, which are critical for energy transfer and the formation of nucleic acids. Sulfur, delivered from volcanic gases and hydrothermal vents, became part of amino acids and cofactors. Iron and other transition metals helped catalyze reactions by temporarily holding electrons or creating reactive surfaces. Even small amounts of these elements were crucial for the organization of chemistry. Organic molecules could assemble into larger structures. Chains of amino acids could link to form peptides. Nucleotides could join to form short strands of RNA. Simple. Sugars and fatty acids could form protopolymers and membranes. These structures were not alive, but they demonstrated that chemistry on Earth could organize itself into patterns capable of supporting more complex reactions. Each new molecule or assembly increased the range of possible interactions. Chemical energy sources were essential. Sunlight provided ultraviolet radiation that could drive reactions in surface pools. Lightning supplied bursts of energy that initiated molecular bonds or broke existing ones. Heat from geothermal activity created gradients in temperature and pressure that drove diffusion and convection. Even mild chemical gradients in water caused by differences in concentration could provide energy to move molecules and favor certain reactions. All of these energy sources interacted with available elements to sustain networks of chemical activity. Over time, molecules capable of persisting longer in water and resisting breakdown were more likely to accumulate. Some sequences of reactions produced compounds that could assist in forming similar compounds again. This does not constitute replication in the biological sense, but it does represent persistence and organization. The chemical landscape of early Earth allowed certain molecular networks to dominate their local environments, creating localized complexity. The oceans and shallow waters acted as large-scale laboratories. Molecules formed, reacted, and occasionally broke down, constantly cycling through new combinations. Tides, rainfall, and evaporation repeatedly moved and concentrated these compounds. Repeated exposure to energy sources like sunlight or heat caused reactions to occur again and again. Over millions of years, these cycles allowed molecules to explore a vast number of arrangements, increasing the chances of forming more complex systems. Mineral surfaces continued to act as organizers. Layers of clays could trap molecules in ordered patterns, aligning them in ways that promoted bonding. Iron-sulfur minerals at hydrothermal vents could catalyze reactions, helping transfer electrons and enabling redox chemistry. These processes created conditions where molecules could begin to interact in networks, forming proto-cycles of chemical activity. Such networks are a precursor to the organized chemistry necessary for life. The diversity of molecules on early Earth was immense. Carbon chains of various lengths, amino acids with different side groups, simple sugars, phosphate-containing compounds, and fatty acids all coexisted in dynamic mixtures. Each molecule had distinct chemical properties, and their interactions were governed by physical laws. Even small differences in structure could determine stability or reactivity. Over long periods, these factors allowed certain combinations to persist and accumulate. Self-organizing chemical systems began to emerge. Certain molecules could act as catalysts for their own formation or for the formation of complementary molecules. Cycles of reaction, driven by energy sources and facilitated by mineral surfaces, allowed networks of molecules to maintain themselves. These systems were still entirely chemical, without membranes or replication, but they represented the first step toward organized, life-compatible chemistry. Water, minerals, and cosmic elements continued to interact in layered ways. Surface pools provided light and evaporation. Hydrothermal vents offered heat, minerals, and redox gradients. Deep sediments acted as reservoirs for longer-term accumulation of molecules. Across these environments, chemical networks could span multiple microhabitats, exchanging molecules and energy. This connectivity increased the likelihood of more complex assemblies forming. By this stage, the chemical foundation for life existed. Organic molecules were abundant, capable of forming chains and networks. Water allowed mobility and stability. Minerals provided surfaces and catalysis. Energy sources were available to drive reactions. Trace elements supplied the specific functions necessary for catalysis and structure. Chemistry was organized enough to allow the emergence of increasingly complex systems. At no point in this process is speculation about life itself required. All observed steps, from simple molecules to self-organizing networks, occur under established chemical and physical principles. Laboratory studies and observations of hydrothermal vents, volcanic lakes, and other early Earth analogues demonstrate that these reactions are possible and likely given the conditions inherited from stars. This is the factual transition from cosmic chemistry to planetary chemistry, capable of supporting life. In conclusion, the chemical foundation of life on Earth is the result of a continuous chain of processes, elements created in stars, scattered through supernovae, recycled through molecular clouds, and concentrated in the forming Earth, combined under suitable conditions to create organic molecules. Water acted as a solvent, minerals acted as catalysts, and energy sources drove reactions. Molecules organized into networks that persisted and interacted, setting the stage for biology without invoking speculative steps. This stage connects cosmic material to the earliest chemistry capable of supporting life. The human body is a complex assembly of atoms that once existed in stars. Every element within it has a history that stretches back billions of years. Iron, the metal that gives blood its color and allows it to carry oxygen, was forged deep inside massive stars. When these stars ended their lives in supernovae, iron was expelled into space, eventually becoming part of the gas and dust clouds that formed the solar system. On Earth, iron was incorporated into the planet's crust and oceans. Through processes of evolution, the human body developed a system in which iron became a critical component of hemoglobin, the protein responsible for transporting oxygen from the lungs to tissues. Each iron atom in hemoglobin follows the same rules of physics and chemistry that governed its formation in a collapsing stellar core. Its role is precise. Iron binds to oxygen molecules with a specific affinity, releasing them where tissues need them most, sustaining cellular metabolism and energy production. Calcium is another element with a stellar origin. Created in the cores of stars through the fusion of lighter elements, calcium was scattered into the interstellar medium during supernova and later incorporated into planetary matter. On Earth, it accumulated in soils and rocks, entering the food chain through water, plants, and animals. In humans, calcium forms the backbone of the skeletal system. Hydroxyapatite, the mineral matrix in bones and teeth, relies on calcium ions to maintain structural strength. Calcium is also critical for the function of muscles and nerves. When a neuron fires, calcium ions flow into the cell, triggering neurotransmitter release. When a muscle contracts, calcium ions regulate the interaction of actin and myosin filaments. Without calcium, these physiological processes would fail. Each calcium atom in the body once spent eons inside a star, only later to become part of bones, teeth, and the fluid systems that facilitate life. Phosphorus has a similar path. Forged in massive stars and spread through supernova explosions, phosphorus was incorporated into the planet's crust and oceans. On a molecular level, phosphorus is central to energy transfer. Adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the universal energy currency of cells, relies on phosphorus to store and release energy in its bonds. DNA and RNA also incorporate phosphate groups along their backbones, linking nucleotides into stable chains capable of encoding information. Phosphorus atoms thus form the structural and energetic foundation for life. Every ATP molecule that powers a human cell contains atoms that originated in stars long before the solar system existed. Sodium and potassium, both created in stellar processes, are fundamental to the function of neurons. These elements are responsible for generating electrical signals that allow nerves to communicate. Sodium ions flow into neurons, while potassium ions flow out, creating a difference in charge across the cell membrane. This electrochemical gradient, the action potential, moves along nerve fibers and enables rapid transmission of information. It is the physical basis for sensation, movement, and thought. Sodium and potassium also maintain fluid balance and osmotic pressure, critical for all cellular functions. Each ion traces back to a history of stellar nucleosynthesis, supernova dispersal, and planetary incorporation. Magnesium, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen are similarly vital. Magnesium, often bound in enzymes, stabilizes molecules and assists in chemical reactions. Carbon forms the backbone of all organic molecules, while oxygen participates in energy release during metabolism. Nitrogen is incorporated into amino acids and nucleotides, essential for proteins and genetic material. Phosphorus, sulfur, and trace metals like zinc, copper, and selenium enable specific biochemical reactions. Every element in these processes has a path leading back to stars. Carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen were produced primarily in smaller stars through fusion, whereas sulfur and metals come from supernovae, or massive stars that experienced layered fusion before exploding. The circulatory system distributes these elements throughout the body. Iron in hemoglobin carries oxygen. Calcium circulates in blood and extracellular fluids. Phosphorus participates in energy and nucleic acid transport. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium ions maintain gradients essential for nerve impulses and muscle contraction. The body organizes these elements into highly specific roles. Each system depends on precise concentrations. Too much or too little of any element can impair function. For example, iron deficiency leads to anemia, while excess iron can be toxic. Calcium deficiency weakens bones, whereas excess calcium can interfere with nerve function. Phosphorus imbalance affects energy metabolism and genetic stability. Sodium and potassium imbalances can disrupt cardiac rhythm and neural signaling. The precise use of these elements reflects both chemical properties determined in stars and evolutionary adaptation. Trace elements, though present in tiny amounts, are no less important. Zinc stabilizes enzyme structures, facilitating biochemical reactions. Copper participates in redox chemistry within mitochondria. Selenium is incorporated into selenoproteins, which protect cells from oxidative damage. These elements, though scarce, follow the same cosmic path as bulk elements. Stars produce them, supernovae disperse them, and planetary chemistry concentrated them into Earth's biosphere. Human biology has adapted to use these elements efficiently, incorporating each into enzymes, structural proteins, and signaling pathways. Even minor elements, without which life's chemistry would falter, are direct products of stellar nucleosynthesis. Oxygen and hydrogen in water molecules are another example. Hydrogen is primordial, originating from the early universe shortly after the Big Bang, while oxygen was produced in stellar fusion in massive stars. Combined, they form water, the solvent in which all cellular chemistry occurs. Water carries ions and molecules, mediates reactions, and maintains temperature homeostasis. Every cellular compartment depends on the properties of water, a substance whose elements were created in stars, or the earliest moments of the cosmos. Carbon, essential for all life, illustrates the connection between stardust and biology vividly. Carbon atoms, formed in helium-burning layers of red giant stars, survived ejection into space and eventual incorporation into molecular clouds. While Earth, carbon formed simple organic compounds that became building blocks for more complex molecules. Carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids all rely on carbon's unique bonding properties. The human body, roughly 18% carbon by mass, is literally shaped by atoms once locked inside ancient stars. Iron, calcium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, magnesium, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and trace elements combine to form the structures and processes that sustain life. Muscles contract, neurons fire, blood transports oxygen, DNA encodes information, energy flows through ATP, all mediated by atoms that once existed in distant stellar cores. The body is organized in ways that use these elements precisely. Red blood cells concentrate iron in hemoglobin. Bones store calcium and phosphorus. Neurons maintain sodium-potassium gradients. Mitochondria use phosphorus to release energy. Each system reflects both the chemical properties inherited from stars and evolutionary adaptation over billions of years. The elemental ratios in the human body also mirror galactic chemistry. Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen dominate, reflecting their abundance in the galaxy and their production in multiple generations of stars. Metals and trace elements, though much less abundant, provide critical functions. Evolution has exploited the available inventory of elements, incorporating them in ways that are efficient and precise. Physiological systems operate within narrow ranges, demonstrating the fidelity of both chemistry and biological adaptation. In terms of spatial organization, these elements are distributed where they are needed most. Iron in hemoglobin circulates in the bloodstream. Calcium in bones and teeth forms rigid structures and serves as a reservoir. phosphorus is distributed in nucleic acids, ATP, and phospholipids. Sodium and potassium are compartmentalized inside and outside cells to maintain electrical gradients. Magnesium and trace metals are localized in enzymes and structural proteins. The spatial arrangement reflects both the chemical characteristics of the elements and the functional requirements of physiology. Energy flow in the body depends on these elements. Glucose metabolism, oxidative phosphorylation, and ATP cycling require oxygen, carbon, phosphorus, magnesium, and trace metals. Calcium and sodium are critical for signaling, while iron allows oxygen delivery. Each step, from electron transport in mitochondria to nerve firing and muscle contraction, relies on elements originating in stars. The body's energetic processes, therefore, are a direct continuation of cosmic chemistry. Even at the cellular level, the relationship is clear. DNA molecules contain phosphorus and nitrogen. RNA uses the same phosphorus backbone. Proteins are built from amino acids containing carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. Enzymes require metal cofactors for activity. Membranes, composed of lipid molecules, incorporate phosphorus and carbon. All of these structures function because of the chemical properties of atoms formed in stellar interiors and supernovae. Cells organize these atoms into systems capable of energy transformation, information storage, and structural support. Water movement, another fundamental process, illustrates the integration of stellar matter. Hydrogen and oxygen atoms in water participate in hydrogen bonding, maintain osmotic balance, and facilitate nutrient transport. Sodium and potassium gradients control water movement across membranes. The combined action of these elements sustains hydration, nutrient delivery, and waste removal. Without these interactions, cellular life would not be possible. Each element's role traces a lineage from stellar formation to planetary concentration to biological use. Trace metals, though present in microgram quantities, are essential for catalysis. Zinc stabilizes protein structure, copper facilitates electron transfer, and selenium protects against oxidative stress. These elements were produced in specific stellar environments, dispersed through supernovae, and concentrated in planetary matter. The human body has evolved to utilize them efficiently, highlighting the continuity from cosmic chemistry to life. In sum, the human body is an integrated system that uses elements from stars in precise and indispensable ways. Iron in blood, calcium in bones, phosphorus in DNA, sodium and potassium in neurons, magnesium and trace metals in enzymes. All are direct descendants of stellar processes. Their distribution, function, and interaction reflect both their chemical properties and billions of years of evolutionary adaptation. The body demonstrates the continuity from nucleosynthesis in stars to the organized chemistry that supports human life. Every physiological process, from oxygen transport to energy production, nerve signaling, and molecular synthesis, depends on matter created in distant stars, recycled through planetary processes, and incorporated into living systems. Understanding these elements' origins provides insight into the deep connection between the cosmos and human biology. The human body is temporary. It grows, functions, ages, and eventually ceases. Cells divide, tissues repair, organs operate, and metabolism continues, yet the body as a whole has a finite lifespan. After death, the material that composed it does not vanish. Water evaporates, minerals leach into soil, carbon is released as carbon dioxide, and atoms that once formed proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids disperse into the environment. These atoms are ancient, unchanging in their identity, persisting regardless of the biological structures that temporarily contain them. Iron in hemoglobin, calcium in bones, phosphorus in DNA, hydrogen and oxygen in water molecules. All of these atoms maintain their properties and continue their existence across time and space. This permanence contrasts with biological impermanence. Cells are replaced continuously, tissues turn over, and organisms live and die. Human generations succeed one another, each life forming a transient structure that organizes atoms in specific ways for a period of time. Even in ecosystems, species appear and disappear, populations fluctuate, and food chains shift with climate, geology, and chemistry. Yet throughout these changes, the atoms themselves persist, circulating through living and non-living matter. Carbon atoms from ancient stars, for example, have passed through countless organisms over billions of years, sometimes part of plant cellulose, sometimes within proteins, sometimes forming water or carbon dioxide. Energy flows through these systems, but matter is recycled. Plants capture energy from the sun to fix carbon into organic molecules. Herbivores consume plants, carnivores eat herbivores, and decomposers break down dead material. In each transfer, atoms move from one organism to another without losing their chemical identity. Nitrogen cycles through soil and organisms. Phosphorus moves from rocks into living tissue and back into sediments. Iron circulates through food webs, returning to the environment in feces, decomposing bodies, or eroding minerals. This continuity of atoms illustrates a fundamental principle. While structures are temporary, the building blocks of life remain remarkably persistent. The recycling of atoms extends beyond Earth. Water molecules evaporate into the atmosphere and return as precipitation, carrying dissolved ions that originated from minerals and living matter. Dust from soil and rocks can enter the atmosphere, travel long distances, and settle in oceans or other ecosystems. Carbon dioxide exhaled by humans contributes to global carbon cycles, eventually being captured by plants or oceanic processes. These cycles connect individual lives to broader planetary systems, showing how atomic matter continues moving and participating in chemistry long after biological structures cease to exist. Within organisms, atoms undergo constant turnover. Human cells replace molecules over days, weeks, and years. Proteins are broken down and resynthesized. Lipids are metabolized. Nucleic acids are repaired or replicated. Hydrogen atoms in water molecules in the body are replaced frequently as water is consumed and excreted. Carbon and nitrogen in biomolecules are constantly cycling through metabolism. Despite this continuous change at the molecular level, the atoms themselves are not destroyed. They persist and remain chemically identical. This turnover ensures that life is dynamic, while the constituent matter remains permanent. Biological impermanence also extends to population levels. Humans, plants, and animals appear, reproduce, and die, while ecosystems reorganize and evolve. Species migrate, adapt, and sometimes vanish, yet the atoms within them continue. Nitrogen atoms in soil can have been part of a dinosaur, a tree, and a bird, eventually becoming part of human tissue or oceanic plankton. Phosphorus in bones might have cycled through multiple species over millions of years before entering a modern human. Each atom's history spans immense timescales, while the lives it temporarily supports are fleeting. Decomposition and decay illustrate this process vividly. When a body dies, microbes and fungi break down complex molecules into simpler forms. Proteins become amino acids. Nucleic acids release phosphate and nitrogen. Fats break down into glycerol and fatty acids. These components are further metabolized, releasing atoms back into the soil, water, and atmosphere. Nutrients are absorbed by plants, incorporated into food webs, and eventually consumed by other organisms. Through these steps, atoms are never lost. They are continually reincorporated, forming new structures and supporting subsequent generations of life. Energy is consumed and transformed, but atoms are conserved. When humans metabolize food, chemical bonds are broken to release energy, and the matter is reorganized into new molecules or expelled as waste. Oxygen atoms in food or water may become part of carbon dioxide exhaled or water molecules excreted. Hydrogen atoms participate in energy-releasing reactions, forming water or contributing to other molecules. Even as energy flows and chemical forms change, the individual atoms persist, participating in new reactions, new structures, and new life cycles. This pattern applies on a global scale. Earth's atmosphere, oceans, and crust continually exchange atoms. Carbon cycles between the atmosphere, oceans, and biosphere. Nitrogen is fixed by microbes, taken up by plants, consumed by animals, and returned to soil or water. Phosphorus erodes from rocks, circulates through living organisms, and deposits again in sediments. Iron and trace metals follow similar paths. Each atom moves through physical and biological systems without being destroyed, even as the entities that temporarily contain it, cells, tissues, organisms, cease to exist. The permanence of atoms also highlights the shared nature of matter. Hydrogen in water, carbon in proteins, iron in blood. All originated in stars that lived long before Earth formed. These atoms have passed through multiple organisms, ecosystems, and generations, linking all living things. While individuals live and die, the atoms themselves are persistent participants in ongoing cycles, connecting humans, plants, animals, and the environment in an unbroken chain of matter. Timescales for atomic persistence are immense. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen atoms may spend millions of years in sediments, oceans, or rocks before being reintroduced into living systems. Iron and other metals may circulate through soils, minerals, and water for similar durations. This temporal continuity contrasts sharply with the ephemeral existence of biological structures. Life organizes these atoms for a short period, using them in metabolism, structure, and signaling before returning them to broader systems. Even within the human body, the cycles are continuous. Water is replaced every few days. Nutrients are metabolized, incorporated into new molecules, and excreted. Proteins, fats, nucleic acids, and carbohydrates are constantly renewed. Cells divide and die, yet the constituent atoms remain chemically identical. This duality, biological impermanence and atomic permanence, is a defining feature of life. It shows that while life is transient, the matter supporting it is enduring, continuously reused and reorganized across generations. Ecosystems exemplify this recycling. Plants capture atmospheric carbon through photosynthesis, forming sugars and other organic compounds. Herbivores consume plants, incorporating carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and trace elements into their tissues. Carnivores eat herbivores, and decomposers break down organic matter after death. Each step moves atoms through different chemical forms and organisms without destroying them. The atoms that were once part of a living creature can appear in countless other forms over millions of years. The ocean and atmosphere amplify these cycles. Carbon atoms leave organisms as carbon dioxide, dissolve in seawater, or become part of carbonate minerals. Nitrogen cycles between atmospheric gas, nitrates, ammonium, and amino acids. Phosphorus enters water, binds to sediments, and re-enters biological systems. Trace metals move through dissolved forms, sediments, and living tissue. These cycles demonstrate the continuous availability and persistence of atoms, independent of any single organism's lifespan. On geological timescales, atoms participate in even larger processes. Carbon stored in rocks or deep ocean sediments may take millions of years to re-emerge through erosion or volcanic activity. Phosphorus locked in sediments can return slowly through weathering. Iron can remain in minerals for eons before entering biological systems. Even as continents shift, oceans circulate, and climates change, the atoms themselves persist, maintaining chemical continuity across immense time and space. This continuity underscores the distinction between temporary forms and permanent matter. The human body organizes atoms into structures and processes for decades. Ecosystems maintain networks of living organisms for centuries or millennia. Civilizations manipulate materials for thousands of years. Yet all of these are ephemeral structures. Atoms are the enduring participants, moving through chemical and biological systems, constantly recycled, never destroyed. Their permanence allows life to exist as a transient organization built from timeless material. Thus, the human body is part of a much larger cycle. Cells, tissues, and organs are temporary assemblies of enduring atoms. Death returns these atoms to the environment, where they continue to participate in chemistry and biology. New generations of life incorporate them, sustaining ecosystems and the cycles of matter. Each atom carries a lineage that spans stars, planets, and living systems. Individual bodies pass away, but the atoms endure, connecting life across time and space in a continuous loop of chemical continuity. Humans exist as a temporary arrangement of matter, a specific organization of atoms that have traveled through space and time. Every element within the body, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, iron, calcium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, and trace metals, was created in processes far older than the solar system. Some hydrogen originates from the earliest moments after the Big Bang. Carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen formed in the cores of long-dead stars through nuclear fusion. Heavier elements, including iron, gold, and trace metals, were synthesized in massive stars and dispersed across the galaxy through supernovae. These atoms eventually collected in the molecular cloud that collapsed to form the Sun, the planets, and the Earth. Through billions of years of physical and chemical processes, the same atoms became part of soils, oceans, and living organisms, finally arranging themselves in the specific pattern we recognize as a human being. The body is a highly ordered system, but this order is temporary. Cells, tissues, organs, and systems perform coordinated functions, sustaining life for decades. Water circulates, oxygen and nutrients flow, neurons transmit electrical signals, muscles contract, and DNA encodes information for growth and reproduction. All of these processes rely on precise chemical interactions between atoms and molecules, each obeying the same physical laws that govern the universe. Atoms themselves do not age or die. They persist indefinitely. The structure that temporarily organizes them, the human body, is ephemeral. It exists only while the arrangements of atoms remain functional. When a body dies, the atoms are released back into the environment, returning to the soil, water, and atmosphere, ready to participate in new configurations. Energy is an essential part of this configuration. Sunlight drives photosynthesis, forming the carbohydrates that feed the food chain. Chemical energy stored in food is converted by metabolic processes into usable energy for movement, growth, and repair. Electrons move through biochemical pathways, creating gradients that power molecular machines. Each energy transfer depends on the chemical properties of the atoms involved and the laws of physics that govern their interactions. The energy flow enables the temporary structure of life, yet it leaves the underlying atoms intact, continuing their journey through matter and time. Molecules like proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, and carbohydrates exemplify how atoms can be organized into functional systems. Carbon atoms form stable chains and rings, linking with hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur to create structures capable of folding, catalyzing reactions, and storing information. Metal ions stabilize enzymes, participate in electron transfers, and allow precise chemical transformations. The resulting molecules perform specialized tasks. Enzymes catalyze reactions. DNA stores genetic information. Hemoglobin transports oxygen, and membranes separate compartments. Each function depends on atomic arrangement, but not on the uniqueness of the individual atoms, which are continually recycled from cosmic sources. From a physical standpoint, humans are collections of these functional molecules interacting within fluid, dynamic systems. Cells divide, replace damaged components, and respond to environmental signals. Organs coordinate chemical and physical processes across scales. Even consciousness and neural activity are products of atomic interactions, electrical potentials, and chemical signaling. None of these require the atoms to be created anew. They depend only on the organization and motion of existing matter. The human form, therefore, is a transient assembly arising from atoms that have existed for billions of years and that will persist long after the body ceases to function. The temporal nature of humans is evident in growth and decay. Babies are small, composed of the same elements as adults, but organized in smaller numbers and simpler structures. As growth proceeds, cells divide, molecules are synthesized, and organs develop. Aging alters the efficiency of molecular machinery, reduces the capacity for repair, and eventually leads to the breakdown of systems. Death releases atoms back to the environment, where they enter cycles of matter, joining new organisms, sediments, water, or air. The human body is, in this sense, a fleeting arrangement, a temporary configuration that organizes atoms into a particular functional form. This configuration is also a product of evolution. Over billions of years, chemical processes on Earth led to the emergence of life. Organisms adapted to utilize the available atoms and energy sources efficiently. The structure of humans reflects millions of years of biological selection, refining how atoms are organized to support metabolism, reproduction, and interaction with the environment. Every atom in a human body is positioned according to both physical laws and evolutionary constraints. Yet none is unique to a single individual. All have traveled through the universe long before being incorporated into a person. The continuity of atomic matter contrasts with the fleeting nature of individual life. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and other atoms have moved through stars, interstellar clouds, planetary systems, and countless organisms. They persist even as bodies form, function, and decay. Humans, along with all living creatures, are temporary patterns imposed on this enduring material. The organization is remarkable, but it is not permanent. Death, decomposition, and recycling are natural outcomes of the transient nature of biological structures. Atoms themselves are imperishable in the chemical sense, while bodies are impermanent configurations built upon them. Understanding humans in this way is purely scientific and observational. It does not invoke metaphor, mysticism, or meaning beyond the physical facts. Humans are composed of atoms forged in stars, assembled through planetary chemistry and organized by biological processes. They are temporary patterns that perform work, transmit information, and interact with the environment. Their life cycles demonstrate the impermanence of organized systems and the permanence of the material that supports them. The atoms within a single human may continue through many other forms, passing from one living system to another, persisting for billions of years while the original body ceases to exist. The human body also illustrates the precision of atomic arrangement. Iron binds oxygen in hemoglobin with exact chemical specificity. Calcium and phosphorus create rigid bone structures capable of supporting movement and protecting internal organs. Sodium and potassium maintain gradients across cell membranes, enabling nerve impulses and muscle contractions. Phosphorus in DNA carries genetic information through generations. Magnesium and trace metals catalyze essential reactions. The functionality of these systems depends entirely on the organization of atoms in space and time. The atoms themselves are indifferent to their arrangement, but the specific configuration creates the phenomenon recognized as human life. In ecological terms, humans are part of continuous matter cycles. Atoms consumed as food, water, and air enter cellular systems, participate in metabolism, and are eventually released back to the environment. Carbon leaves the body as carbon dioxide, nitrogen in urea returns to the soil, and trace elements cycle through ecosystems. These atoms then become available to plants, microorganisms, and other animals. The continuity of matter allows life to persist across generations, even though individual organisms, including humans, exist only temporarily. Each life is a momentary assembly of enduring material. This perspective highlights the relationship between cosmic and biological time. Stars live and die over millions to billions of years, creating elements that persist indefinitely. Planets collect and organize these elements over billions of years. Life organizes them further, creating temporary functional systems that last decades or centuries. Humans are one such system, existing for a short span compared to the age of the atoms they contain. Their impermanence is natural, a result of physical, chemical, and biological constraints. The atoms themselves continue, ready to participate in new structures long after any individual life ends. Finally, humans are not metaphorical star children in a poetic sense. They are literal, temporary configurations of cosmic matter. The stars created the elements. Supernovae dispersed them. Planetary chemistry arranged them into a form capable of supporting life. Evolution refined the organization into humans. Every process follows the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. Each human body demonstrates the remarkable capacity of atoms to organize temporarily into complex, functional systems. Yet, when life ends, the configuration dissolves, and atoms return to the universal cycles from which they originated. Observation shows that this is the full scientific story of human material existence. In conclusion, humans exist as momentary structures, a fleeting organization of atoms forged in stars. They carry iron, calcium, phosphorus, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and trace elements across time, cycling through generations of life and ecological systems. Bodies form, function, age, and decompose. Atoms persist, entering new cycles and participating in new configurations. Life is transient. Matter is enduring. Understanding this provides a calm, observational perspective on human existence, grounded in evidence, without embellishment or metaphor. The human form is temporary, remarkable, and entirely dependent on the enduring atoms provided by the cosmos, a natural conclusion to the story of stardust becoming life